Welcome to Channel Blush and Blood. The screen glowed softly in the darkness of a small apartment as 23-year-old Ava Monroe adjusted her camera one final time. Thousands of viewers were already flooding into her live stream, watching from bedrooms, living rooms, and late-night work shifts across the country. Ava smiled at the camera, brushed a loose strand of blonde hair behind her ear, and reached for her foundation brush. It looked like any other live stream. Just another night. Just another beauty session. Just another girl talking about makeup, relationships, and everyday life. But nobody watching knew they were about to witness the last moments anyone would ever see of Ava Monroe. As I blend my foundation, imagine this scene. The clock on Ava's wall read 11:57 p.m. Outside, rain tapped gently against the apartment windows. The city was unusually quiet. Even Ava mentioned it. "Isn't it weird how silent it is tonight?" she laughed while applying concealer beneath her eyes. The comment seemed harmless. At least at the time. The chat exploded with messages. Some viewers joked that she was being dramatic. Others asked about the lipstick she was wearing. A few requested makeup tutorials. Everything felt normal. Comfortably normal. The kind of normal that makes what happened next even more terrifying. Ava had built a loyal audience over the previous 3 years. She wasn't a celebrity. She wasn't famous enough to have security guards or paparazzi following her around. But she was known online. Her nightly live streams had become a routine for thousands of people. Every evening at midnight, viewers would grab snacks, settle into bed, and watch Ava talk while doing her makeup. For many people, she felt like a friend. Someone familiar. Someone safe. That night was no different. At least for the first 20 minutes. Ava chatted about a recent shopping trip while carefully applying eyeliner. She laughed at comments. Answered questions. Shared embarrassing stories. Nothing seemed unusual. Then something changed. Very slightly. So slightly that most viewers completely missed it. Ava suddenly stopped speaking in the middle of a sentence. Her eyes shifted toward the apartment hallway. She stared. Just stared. For nearly 5 seconds. 5 long seconds. An uncomfortable silence filled the stream. "What was that?" one viewer typed. Ava forced a smile. "Sorry. I thought I heard something." The chat moved on almost immediately. But the strange feeling remained. Ava continued applying mascara, yet her eyes kept drifting toward the hallway. Again. And again. And again. Almost like she was listening for something. Or someone. The rain outside intensified. Thunder rolled across the city. The atmosphere inside the apartment somehow felt darker. Even viewers watching later would describe the moment as unsettling. Not because anything obvious happened. But because Ava looked afraid. And nobody could figure out why. A few minutes later she laughed nervously. "You guys ever get that feeling you're being watched?" The comment triggered thousands of reactions. Most people assumed she was joking. Some teased her. Others blamed the scary movie she often talked about. But Ava wasn't laughing anymore. Not really. Her smile looked forced. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up a makeup brush. Then something happened that would later become one of the most analyzed moments of the entire investigation. A shadow appeared. Just for a second. Behind Ava. Near the hallway entrance. The livestream quality wasn't perfect. The lighting was dim. The figure appeared only briefly. So brief that most viewers didn't notice it until investigators reviewed the footage days later. But it was there. A dark shape. A silhouette. Something moving where nobody should have been. Ava froze. The color drained from her face. Her eyes widened. She was looking directly at the hallway. Directly at whatever had just moved. The chat immediately noticed her expression. "Ava. What's wrong? Are you okay?" She swallowed hard. Then she smiled again. That same fake smile. I'm fine. But she wasn't. Everyone could tell. For the next several minutes, Ava became distracted. She struggled to focus on conversations. She kept checking her phone. She kept glancing toward the apartment entrance. It felt like she was waiting for something. Or dreading something. Then came the moment that changed everything. At exactly 12:41 a.m., a loud sound echoed somewhere inside the apartment. A bang. Sharp. Unexpected. Ava jumped. The viewers jumped. Even people watching with headphones later described it as terrifying. Ava stood up immediately. What the hell was that? Those were the last clear words she ever spoke on camera. The chat exploded. Messages flooded the screen faster than anyone could read. Ava grabbed her phone and cautiously walked toward the hallway. The camera remained on her makeup desk. Foundation bottles. Lipstick tubes. Mascara. Brushes. Everything sitting perfectly still. Viewers could hear footsteps. Then silence. A strange silence. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. 30 seconds. Then. A scream. A single horrifying scream. The live stream shook violently. Something crashed. The screen tilted sideways. And the broadcast ended. Just like that. Gone. Disconnected. Thousands of viewers sat frozen in shock. Most assumed it was a prank. Others believed her internet had failed. A few felt something much darker. Something was terribly wrong. What nobody realized at that moment was that Ava Monroe had just vanished. And by sunrise, there would be no sign of her anywhere. No phone. No messages. No explanation. Only one chilling live stream. And a mystery that would consume an entire city. Because hidden inside those final 41 minutes was a secret so disturbing that investigators would spend years trying to uncover the truth. And the deeper they looked, the stranger the story became. By the time the sun rose the next morning, Ava Monroe's disappearance had become the only thing anyone could talk about. Friends were calling her. Family members were texting her. Viewers were refreshing her social media pages every few minutes. Nothing. No response. No explanation. No sign that Ava had ever returned after walking down that hallway. And that's when people started asking a question that seemed simple at first. Who was Ava Monroe, really? Because sometimes the person we see online isn't the same person who exists when the camera turns off. To millions of internet users, Ava was cheerful, funny, and relatable. She lived in the fictional city of Briar Heights, a growing riverside city known for its nightlife, old brick buildings, and endless rainy evenings. Her content wasn't flashy. She didn't show off expensive cars. She didn't post luxury vacations. Instead, she sat in front of a camera almost every night and talked while doing her makeup. That was her thing. Simple. Authentic. Comforting. Viewers loved watching her blend foundation while discussing life problems. They listened to her stories while she applied eyeliner. They followed makeup tutorials that somehow felt more like conversations with a friend. She had built an audience of nearly 500,000 followers. Not celebrity-level famous. But definitely recognizable. The strange thing was that Ava never originally wanted to become an influencer. Years earlier she had worked at a small bookstore downtown. She was quiet. Shy. The kind of person who preferred reading mystery novels in the corner rather than attending parties. According to friends, she hated attention. At least back then. Everything changed after a difficult breakup. Ava started live streaming simply as a distraction. A hobby. Something to help her feel less alone. Nobody expected it to grow. Least of all Ava. Yet somehow people connected with her honesty. She wasn't perfect. And that's exactly why viewers trusted her. But trust can be dangerous. Because the more her audience grew, the more strangers became interested in her life. At first it seemed harmless. Supportive comments. Friendly messages. Fan art. Small gifts sent to her mailing address. Then things started getting weird. A year before her disappearance, Ava mentioned receiving letters from someone she didn't know. The messages weren't threatening. At least not directly. They were unsettling. The writer seemed to know details that Ava had never shared publicly. Specific coffee shops she visited. Stores she shopped at. The route she took home. At first she laughed about it during a live stream. She called the sender her mystery fan. The audience laughed too. Nobody thought much of it. But privately, according to people close to her, Ava was frightened. Really frightened. One friend later described a conversation they had just months before the disappearance. Ava had supposedly said, "Sometimes I feel like somebody knows where I am before I even get there." At the time, the statement sounded paranoid. Now it sounded terrifying. As investigators began examining Ava's life, they discovered something else. Something viewers never knew. Ava lived alone. Completely alone. No roommates. No partner. No family nearby. Every night after ending her streams, she returned to an empty apartment. Or at least everyone believed she did. The more detectives dug into her personal life, the more contradictions they found. People who knew Ava described her in completely different ways. Some called her outgoing. Others called her secretive. Some believed she was happy. Others insisted she was struggling emotionally. It was almost as if there were two versions of Ava. The one on camera. And the one hiding behind it. Then investigators discovered something even stranger. Just 3 weeks before her disappearance, Ava had changed several passwords on her accounts. Not unusual by itself. Except she had also upgraded her apartment security. Installed new locks. Added extra cameras. Purchased personal safety devices. And told nobody why. Why would someone do all of that if nothing was wrong? The question bothered investigators immediately. Because those aren't the actions of someone who feels safe. Those are the actions of someone expecting trouble. Someone preparing for something. Or someone. Then another clue emerged. Ava had recently stopped visiting several places she loved. Her favorite coffee shop. Her favorite bookstore. A riverside walking path she often mentioned. She abandoned all of them without explanation. Friends noticed. When they asked why, Ava always changed the subject. Every time. Almost as if she didn't want anyone discussing it. The behavior made no sense. Until investigators examined her final month of messages. That's when they found something disturbing. Ava had become increasingly withdrawn. Short responses. Cancelled plans. Missed calls. Ignored invitations. The outgoing personality her audience loved seemed to disappear whenever the cameras were off. And there was one particular week that stood out. 7 days before she vanished. Something happened. Nobody knew what. But everyone agreed Ava seemed different afterward. Nervous. Distracted. Scared. One friend described seeing Ava stare out a restaurant window for nearly 10 minutes. Not speaking. Not moving. Just watching the street. As if she expected someone to appear. When asked what was wrong, Ava reportedly whispered, "I think I made a mistake." That was it. No explanation. No details. Just those 5 words. "I think I made a mistake." Investigators would spend months trying to figure out what she meant. But the answer wasn't hidden in her apartment. It wasn't hidden in her live streams. And it wasn't hidden in her phone. The truth was buried somewhere much deeper. Somewhere nobody thought to look. Because while Ava appeared to be living an ordinary life, she was secretly connected to something she never discussed online. Something dangerous. Something that could explain why she vanished after that final live stream. And once investigators uncovered it, the entire case would change forever. Because Ava Monroe wasn't just hiding secrets from her audience. She was hiding them from everyone. The first week after Ava Monroe disappeared was chaos. News stations covered the story non-stop. Social media users analyzed every second of her final live stream. True crime forums filled with theories. Some believed she had been kidnapped. Others thought she had staged her own disappearance. A few even claimed the shadow seen in the hallway proved someone had been inside the apartment. But investigators weren't interested in theories. They wanted evidence. And evidence was surprisingly difficult to find. Ava's apartment looked almost untouched. There were no obvious signs of a struggle. No broken windows. No forced entry. No blood. No clear indication of what had happened after she walked down that hallway. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. But then detectives discovered something hidden beneath the version of Ava that everyone knew. A second life. Not a criminal life. Not at first. Just a life she had never shared with anyone. The discovery came from her laptop. Ironically, it wasn't hidden very well. It wasn't locked behind sophisticated encryption. It wasn't buried inside secret software. It was simply stored inside a folder with a boring name nobody would think twice about. Archived projects. Inside were hundreds of files. Notes. Screenshots. Voice recordings. Photographs. Maps. And one document that immediately caught investigators' attention. The title read, "The Watchers." Nobody knew what it meant. At first, detectives assumed it was a writing project. Maybe a story idea. Ava loved mystery novels. Perhaps she was writing fiction. But as they opened the files, that theory quickly disappeared. Because the information inside looked real. Very real. The documents contained dates. Locations. Descriptions of people. Vehicle license numbers. Photographs taken from a distance. Detailed observations. The deeper investigators looked, the stranger things became. For nearly 8 months, Ava had been documenting a group of individuals she referred to only as the Watchers. Who were they? Nobody knew. The files never revealed actual names. Only descriptions. The man in the gray coat. The woman with the silver necklace. The driver. The observer. The notes sounded obsessive. Almost paranoid. Yet they were incredibly detailed. Too detailed to ignore. One entry read, "Gray coat appeared outside the bookstore again. Third sighting this month. He pretended to read a newspaper but never turned a page." Another stated, "Silver necklace followed the same route behind me for 4 blocks before disappearing." And then there was a note written only 10 days before Ava vanished. A note that sent chills through the entire investigation team. It read, "They know I'm noticing them now." Nobody could explain it. Was Ava being stalked? Was she imagining things? Or had she genuinely discovered something dangerous? As detectives reviewed the files, a disturbing pattern emerged. The sightings weren't random. The same individuals appeared repeatedly. Different locations. Different days. Different circumstances. Yet somehow the same descriptions kept showing up. Again. And again. And again. One detective later admitted the files made him uncomfortable. Not because they proved anything. But because they felt too organized to be meaningless. Ava wasn't casually writing observations. She was building a case. A timeline. A record. Almost as if she expected to need evidence someday. The question was why. And then investigators found the photographs. Hundreds of them. Most looked ordinary. Crowded streets. Parking lots. Coffee shops. Bus stops. But hidden within those photos were familiar faces. The same faces mentioned throughout her notes. The same people appearing repeatedly. Sometimes weeks apart. Sometimes months apart. Always watching. Always nearby. One photograph stood out more than all the others. Taken from inside Ava's car. Rain covered the windshield. Across the street stood a man in a gray coat. Looking directly at her. Not at the camera. At her. The image felt deeply unsettling. Because even through the blurry rain-covered glass, the expression on his face looked intentional. Like he knew he was being photographed. Like he wanted her to know he was there. And investigators noticed something else. The photo was taken 6 months before Ava disappeared. 6 months. Meaning whatever frightened her had been happening for a very long time. Far longer than anyone realized. As detectives continued examining her files, they found voice recordings. Most were short. Only a few seconds long. Random observations. Descriptions of events. Reminders. But one recording changed everything. The file had been created only 3 days before Ava vanished. The audio quality was poor. Traffic noise filled the background. Rain could be heard falling. Then Ava's voice spoke quietly. Almost whispering. I don't think this is about me anymore. A pause. Heavy breathing. Then she continued. I think they're looking for something. Another pause. Then. And I think I accidentally found it. The recording ended. No explanation. No details. Nothing. Just another mystery. What had she found? What was so important that it terrified her? And who exactly were they? The answer seemed impossible to find. Until investigators uncovered a final document. A document Ava had updated only hours before her disappearance. The title was simple. If something happens to me. The room reportedly went silent when detectives opened it. Inside was a message written directly by Ava. Not to her audience. Not to her followers. To whoever might investigate her disappearance. The message began with a sentence nobody expected. A sentence that instantly transformed the entire case. It read, I know this sounds impossible, but if you're reading this, then they finally realized what I know. Those 14 words changed everything. Because suddenly investigators weren't looking at a random disappearance anymore. They were looking at a woman who appeared to know she was in danger. A woman who believed something was coming. A woman who had spent months preparing for it. And hidden within the rest of that document was a name. A single name. One investigators had never seen before. A name connected to a secret Ava had protected for months. A name that would soon become the center of the entire investigation. And the last person anyone expected to be involved. The document titled If Something Happens to Me was only 3 pages long. 3 pages. Yet those 3 pages would completely redirect the investigation. Detectives had spent days examining Ava Monroe's apartment, her phone records, her live stream footage, and her social media accounts. Every lead seemed to end in confusion. But this document felt different. For the first time, investigators weren't looking at clues left behind accidentally. They were reading something Ava had intentionally prepared. Something she wanted people to find. The first page contained warnings. Not explanations. Warnings. Ava repeatedly wrote that certain people should not be trusted. She never identified them directly. Instead, she referred to them using descriptions. The ones who always ask too many questions. The people who appear friendly. The ones who never seem surprised. The statements sounded cryptic. Almost paranoid. Yet considering everything investigators had already discovered, nobody was willing to dismiss them. Then they reached the second page. And there it was. The name. Elias Voss. Nobody in the room recognized it. Detectives immediately searched police databases. Nothing. No criminal history. No outstanding warrants. No known connection to Ava. At least not officially. Yet his name appeared multiple times throughout the document. Not just mentioned. Highlighted. Underlined. Repeated. Almost as if Ava desperately wanted investigators to remember it. The document included a single sentence beside his name. If anything happens to me, find Elias before they do. That sentence created more questions than answers. Who was Elias Voss? Why was Ava concerned about him? And who exactly were they? The investigation team immediately began searching for him. Surprisingly, it wasn't easy. There were very few records. Very little online activity. Almost no social media presence. In today's world, that alone seemed unusual. Most people leave digital footprints everywhere. Elias appeared almost invisible. The few records investigators located suggested he was 28 years old. He lived in Briar Heights. He worked freelance technology jobs. And somehow, despite living in the same city, nobody could find any public connection between him and Ava. At least initially. Then a breakthrough occurred. Investigators recovered deleted messages from Ava's laptop. Thousands of messages. Most were ordinary conversations. Brand deals. Friendships. Fan interactions. But hidden among them was a contact saved under a fake name. The account belonged to Elias. And the messages revealed something shocking. Ava had been communicating with him for nearly a year. Almost every day. The conversations weren't romantic. At least they didn't appear to be. Instead, they focused on observations. Questions. Warnings. Information. The tone felt urgent. Sometimes even fearful. One conversation from 6 months earlier stood out immediately. Elias wrote, "You need to stop following them." Ava responded, "I can't." Why? Because if I stop now, nobody will know the truth. The conversation ended there. No explanation. No context. Just another mystery. Investigators continued reading. The deeper they went, the more disturbing the messages became. Ava frequently described feeling watched. Elias seemed to believe her. Not only believe her. He appeared to be helping her investigate. Together, they had spent months documenting strange sightings around the city. The same sightings found inside Ava's files. The same mysterious individuals she called the Watchers. One message was especially alarming. 3 weeks before her disappearance, Ava sent, "Someone was inside my apartment." Elias replied immediately, "Are you sure? Positive? Did they take anything?" A long pause followed before Ava answered, "No." Then they weren't looking for valuables. The message chilled investigators. Because Elias seemed unsurprised. Almost as if he already understood the situation. As if he knew exactly what Ava was dealing with. That realization turned him into the most important person in the case. And possibly the most dangerous. The search for Elias intensified. Detectives visited his registered address. The apartment was empty. Furniture gone. Closets empty. No personal belongings. Nothing. Neighbors reported seeing him leave 2 days before Ava vanished. Nobody had seen him since. Now investigators had 2 missing people. Ava Monroe. Elias Voss. And a growing list of unanswered questions. The media quickly caught wind of the development. Within hours, Elias became the center of public speculation. Internet detectives labeled him a suspect. A kidnapper. A stalker. A secret boyfriend. The theory spread rapidly. But investigators weren't convinced. Because one detail didn't fit. If Elias was responsible for Ava's disappearance, why would Ava leave instructions telling investigators to find him? Why direct attention toward him? Why practically hand detectives his name? Unless she believed he was in danger too. That possibility became impossible to ignore. Then another discovery changed everything. A traffic camera captured footage of Ava's apartment building the night she disappeared. The video quality wasn't perfect. Rain blurred portions of the image. But investigators noticed something remarkable. At approximately 11:34 p.m., just before Ava started her live stream, a man entered the building. The timestamp matched. The height matched. The build matched. It appeared to be Elias Voss. But what happened afterward was even stranger. The footage showed him entering. Yet it never showed him leaving. Not once. Not through the front entrance. Not through the rear exit. Not anywhere. It was as if he had vanished inside the building. Just like Ava. The discovery shocked investigators. Now they weren't searching for a suspect. They were searching for someone who might have disappeared on the very same night. And if Elias truly entered that building before the live stream began, then there was a terrifying possibility. He may have been the last person to see Ava alive. Or perhaps the last person who tried to save her. Because hidden inside the final message Ava ever sent Elias was a sentence investigators had somehow overlooked. A sentence sent only 27 minutes before her live stream started. A sentence that suggested Ava had uncovered something far more dangerous than anyone imagined. It simply read, "They're finally moving tonight." And after that message, neither of them was ever heard from again. The disappearance of Ava Monroe was no longer being treated as a simple missing person case. Not after the live stream. Not after the files. And definitely not after investigators discovered Elias Voss. Now there were too many questions. Too many strange coincidences. Too many clues that refused to fit together. The case officially became the highest priority investigation in Briar Heights. A special task force was assembled. Detectives. Digital forensic analysts. Surveillance experts. Cybercrime specialists. Everyone was assigned one goal. Find Ava. Find Elias. And figure out what they had stumbled into. The first major breakthrough came from Ava's apartment building. Investigators obtained every available security recording. Hundreds of hours of footage. Most of it boring. Residents coming home. Deliveries arriving. Dogs being walked. Nothing unusual. But then analysts noticed something strange. The same unfamiliar faces appeared repeatedly over several months. Different days. Different clothing. Different times. Yet somehow the same people kept showing up. A man with a gray coat. A woman wearing a silver necklace. A bald man carrying a black umbrella. The descriptions matched Ava's files perfectly. At first detectives considered coincidence. After all, people live their lives. They pass through buildings. They walk down streets. But coincidence became harder to believe when the same individuals appeared near multiple locations connected to Ava. Her apartment. Her favorite cafe. The bookstore where she once worked. Even a grocery store she visited regularly. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Someone had been watching her. Or at least someone had been watching the places she visited. The question was why. Meanwhile, digital forensic teams focused on Ava's electronic devices. Most of her data had already been examined. But experts decided to reconstruct deleted information that had been erased months earlier. The process took days. What they recovered shocked everyone. Ava had been secretly creating maps. Dozens of them. Detailed city maps marked with colored pins. Red circles. Blue lines. Handwritten notes. At first the markings appeared random. But when investigators overlaid all the maps together, a pattern emerged. Every location connected to the Watchers formed a rough circle around a single abandoned area of Briar Heights. An industrial district known as Harbor Point. The place had once been thriving. Factories. Warehouses. Shipping facilities. But years of economic decline had left much of it abandoned. Few people visited anymore, especially at night. And yet almost every clue seemed to point there. The task force immediately organized a search. Detectives expected little. Maybe graffiti. Maybe evidence of trespassing. Maybe nothing. Instead, they found something unsettling. One warehouse showed signs of recent activity. Fresh tire tracks. Recent footprints. Discarded food containers. Someone had definitely been there. Recently. The building itself appeared empty. But investigators noticed electrical wiring running through portions of the structure. Power was somehow being supplied despite the property being officially disconnected years earlier. That shouldn't have been possible. A search warrant was obtained immediately. When detectives entered the warehouse, flashlights illuminated layers of dust and rusted machinery. Everything looked abandoned. Until they reached the basement. That's where they found it. A room. Hidden behind a metal wall panel. Small. Windowless. Locked from the outside. Inside sat a folding chair. A desk. Several computer monitors. And photographs. Hundreds of photographs. Photographs of people. Ordinary people. Walking to work. Shopping. Driving. Talking. Living normal lives. Each image had handwritten notes attached. Dates. Locations. Observations. Investigators felt a chill run through the room. Because the setup looked eerily familiar. It resembled Ava's own files. Only larger. Much larger. And far more organized. Whoever used the room had been documenting people for years. One detective later described it as feeling less like an office and more like a surveillance operation. Then they found Ava's picture. Pinned to a wall. Among hundreds of others. The room instantly became a crime scene. Forensic teams flooded the warehouse. Every inch was examined. Every fingerprint collected. Every document catalogued. And that's when another disturbing discovery emerged. A second photograph hung beside Ava's. Elias Voss. He had been documented too. Just like Ava. Just like everyone else. The realization changed the entire investigation. If Ava and Elias were both targets, then perhaps neither of them was responsible. Perhaps they were victims. Victims of something much larger. As investigators continued searching the hidden room, they uncovered notebooks. Thousands of pages. Most contained coded symbols and abbreviations. Difficult to understand. But one notebook contained something readable. A list of names. Over 200 names. Some crossed out. Others circled. Several highlighted. Ava's name appeared near the bottom. Elias's name appeared directly beneath it. The sight was impossible to ignore. Both names had been added only weeks before the disappearances. Whatever list this was, they had recently become important. Very important. Then forensic analysts discovered something even stranger. The notebook contained references to specific dates. Future dates. Events that hadn't happened yet. The entries looked like schedules. Plans. Operations. Nobody could tell. But one date immediately stood out. The night Ava disappeared. Beside the date were 3 handwritten words. Phase 3 begins. No explanation. No context. Nothing. Just those words. The task force suddenly found itself chasing something far more complicated than a kidnapping. The evidence suggested organization. Planning. Coordination. The kind of operation that requires multiple people. Possibly many people. And if that was true, then Ava's mysterious watchers might not have been a handful of individuals. They might have been part of an entire network. A possibility that terrified investigators. Because networks don't disappear when one person vanishes. Networks protect themselves. Networks silence threats. Networks survive. Late that evening, detectives gathered to review everything discovered so far. The room was filled with maps, photographs, evidence boards, timelines, and one question nobody could answer. What exactly had Ava uncovered? Because people do not simply vanish after a live stream. Entire surveillance rooms do not appear inside abandoned warehouses. And strangers do not spend years documenting hundreds of ordinary citizens without a reason. Somewhere hidden within the evidence was the answer. A single clue that connected everything. Ava. Elias. The Watchers. The warehouse. The photographs. The list of names. The problem was that investigators hadn't found it yet. But someone else apparently had. Because at exactly 2:13 in the morning, while detectives were still processing evidence from Harbor Point, an anonymous package arrived outside police headquarters. No return address. No fingerprints. No note. Just a small black flash drive. And when forensic technicians opened the contents, they found a video. A video recorded only hours before Ava disappeared. A video showing something investigators were never supposed to see. Something that would completely shatter their understanding of the case. And reveal that Ava Monroe had been telling the truth all along. At 2:13 in the morning, the black flash drive sat in the center of the evidence table while investigators gathered around it. Nobody knew who had delivered it. Security cameras outside police headquarters had somehow failed to capture the person responsible. The package appeared almost out of nowhere. Which only made everyone more uneasy. Because whoever sent it clearly knew about the investigation. And they knew exactly how to reach the people leading it. The flash drive contained only one file. A video. 23 minutes long. No title. No description. No identifying information. Just raw footage. For a moment nobody moved. Then an investigator pressed play. The screen flickered. Darkness filled the room. Shaky camera movement suggested the footage had been recorded secretly. The image slowly adjusted. And suddenly a familiar face appeared. Ava Monroe. The room fell silent. This was not a live stream. This was not content for her audience. This was something entirely different. Ava looked exhausted. Her hair was tied back carelessly. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes. No perfect lighting. No cheerful personality. No polished makeup routine. Just Ava. The real Ava. The frightened Ava. She stared directly into the camera. Then spoke. If you're watching this, something probably happened. A long pause followed. Her voice trembled slightly. Not from sadness. From fear. Genuine fear. The kind investigators had rarely seen. The kind that cannot be faked. Ava took a deep breath. Then continued. They aren't random people. The sentence immediately grabbed everyone's attention. Because it confirmed something detectives had suspected for weeks. The Watchers were real. Or at least Ava believed they were. She reached toward the camera and adjusted the angle. A map appeared behind her. The same map investigators had recovered from her laptop. Covered in markings. Colored circles. Locations. Notes. Months of observations. Then Ava pointed to several marked locations. The same people appear over and over again. Different neighborhoods. Different jobs. Different identities. But they're connected. She looked toward the door before continuing. Almost as if she feared someone might enter the room. Then she whispered. They aren't watching individuals. Another pause. They're watching information. The statement confused investigators. Information. What information? Ava didn't immediately explain. Instead she opened a notebook. Pages filled with handwritten notes appeared on screen. Many matched evidence already recovered from her apartment. Others were completely new. Then she said something that changed everything. "I never mattered." Investigators exchanged confused looks. Ava continued. "I thought they were following me." She shook her head. "No." Her expression darkened. "They followed people connected to something they lost." The room became silent again. What had been lost? Who lost it? And why would anyone track hundreds of ordinary people to find it? Ava finally answered. At least partially. Several months earlier she had apparently witnessed an event she couldn't explain. An exchange. Late at night. Near Harbor Point. At first she assumed it was a routine business meeting. Then she noticed something unusual. Nobody spoke. No documents changed hands. No money appeared. Instead, one individual handed another person a small metallic case. Afterward, everyone left immediately. The entire interaction lasted less than a minute. Ava thought it was strange. Nothing more. Until the same people appeared repeatedly throughout the city. The same faces. The same vehicles. The same behavior. That's when she began documenting them. And that's when everything started spiraling. Because the deeper she investigated, the more convinced she became that multiple people were searching for something hidden. Something connected to that mysterious case. Then the video took another turn. Ava opened a folder. Inside were photographs investigators had never seen before. Some showed Harbor Point. Others showed storage facilities. Parking garages. Office buildings. But one image froze everyone in the room. A photograph of Elias Voss. Standing beside Ava. Looking directly into the camera. It was the first proof investigators had seen showing them together. Not online. Not through messages. In person. The image had clearly been taken secretly. Neither appeared aware they were being photographed. Someone had been watching them. Watching both of them. 4 months. Ava pointed toward the image. Elias found this. She held up the photograph. He found dozens of them. The realization hit investigators immediately. Someone had been tracking not only Ava and Elias, but anyone connected to their investigation. Ava continued. We got too close. The words hung heavily in the air. Too close to what? Ava finally reached into her bag and removed an object wrapped in cloth. The camera quality wasn't good enough to identify it clearly. But it appeared small. Metallic. Rectangular. Possibly electronic. Whatever it was, Ava treated it carefully. Almost reverently. Then she spoke the sentence that would dominate the investigation for months. This is what they're looking for. Every detective leaned forward. The object filled the screen. Yet frustratingly, details remained unclear. Ava never revealed exactly what it was. She never explained where it came from. And before she could continue, a noise interrupted her. A loud noise. A door closing somewhere nearby. Ava froze. The fear returned instantly. She looked toward the source. Waited. Listened. Then looked back at the camera. For the first time during the entire recording, she seemed genuinely terrified. Not nervous. Terrified. She lowered her voice to a whisper. If something happens to me. Another pause. Her breathing accelerated. Don't trust the obvious answer. Then she added something even stranger. The person everyone blames won't be responsible. Investigators immediately wrote down the statement. Because it sounded intentional. A warning. A clue. Perhaps even a prediction. Ava knew people would look for suspects. She knew assumptions would be made. And apparently she believed those assumptions would be wrong. The video continued for several more minutes. Most consisted of fragmented explanations and incomplete observations. Nothing definitive. Nothing conclusive. Yet one final detail stood out. Near the end of the recording, Ava referenced a specific location. Not Harbor Point. Not her apartment. Not Elias's residence. A place investigators had never heard mentioned before. Blackthorn Station. An abandoned train terminal outside the city. Closed for nearly 20 years. The name appeared only once. Just once. Yet Ava emphasized it carefully. If this video reaches investigators, check Blackthorn Station. Then she added. That's where everything changed. The recording ended abruptly. No goodbye. No explanation. No final message. Just black screen. The room remained silent for several seconds. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Because suddenly the investigation had a direction. A real direction. For weeks detectives had been reacting to clues. Now they had somewhere to go. A location. A lead. A possibility. The task force immediately began preparing a search operation. But there was one problem. When investigators reviewed historical records connected to Blackthorn Station, they discovered something deeply unsettling. The abandoned terminal wasn't actually abandoned. Not completely. Over the past 5 years, dozens of unexplained incidents had been reported nearby. Trespassing complaints. Mysterious lights. Unidentified vehicles. Missing security footage. Anonymous tips. Most had been dismissed. Individually they seemed meaningless. Together they painted a very different picture. Someone had been using Blackthorn Station. Repeatedly. Secretly. 4 years. And if Ava's warning was correct, then the station might contain answers. Answers about the Watchers. Answers about Elias. Answers about the object everyone seemed desperate to find. But as investigators prepared to search the terminal, they had no idea that someone else was already waiting there. Someone who knew Ava. Someone who knew Elias. And someone who had been hiding in the shadows since the very beginning of the story. The person who would soon become the most dangerous suspect in the entire case. The road leading to Blackthorn Station hadn't been maintained in years. Cracked pavement disappeared beneath weeds. Rusted signs leaned sideways. Broken fencing stretched along sections of the property. The place looked forgotten. Abandoned. Dead. Yet investigators couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been there recently. As dawn approached, multiple vehicles from the task force rolled through the gates. Floodlights illuminated the massive structure ahead. Blackthorn Station emerged from the darkness like a ghost. The terminal had once been the pride of Briar Heights. Thousands of passengers passed through it every day decades earlier. Now it stood silent. Its enormous glass windows were cracked. Its platforms were covered in dust. Its tracks led nowhere. Or at least that was what everyone believed. The search began immediately. Teams spread throughout the property. Every room. Every corridor. Every storage area. Hours passed with little progress. Most of the station appeared exactly as expected. Empty. Decaying. Forgotten. Then one investigator noticed something strange. Fresh footprints. The discovery changed everything. Because the prints weren't old. They weren't weeks old. Or even days old. They appeared recent. Very recent. Some may have been only hours old. The trail led deeper into the station. Far below the main terminal. Toward maintenance tunnels that no longer appeared on official blueprints. The atmosphere changed immediately. The air felt colder underground. The narrow passageways amplified every sound. Every footstep echoed. Every breath seemed louder. Investigators followed the footprints through multiple tunnels. Then they found a metal door. Unlike everything else in the station, the door appeared new. Recently installed. Recently used. A search warrant already covered the property. The team entered. What they discovered inside would become one of the most disturbing moments of the investigation. The room wasn't large, but it was organized. Extremely organized. Computers lined one wall. Storage cabinets filled another. Large maps covered multiple surfaces. The setup resembled a command center. A place where information was collected, analyzed, stored. For a moment nobody spoke. Then investigators noticed photographs. Thousands of photographs. Even more than the warehouse. Entire walls were covered. Hundreds of faces. Hundreds of lives. People who had never met each other. Teachers. Nurses. Office workers. Students. Drivers. Parents. Strangers. All carefully documented. All carefully observed. The room looked less like a criminal hideout and more like a massive surveillance archive. Then detectives found Ava. Again. Dozens of photographs. Some taken from incredible distances. Others disturbingly close. One image showed Ava sitting alone in a coffee shop. Another showed her entering her apartment. Another captured her walking through a bookstore. The realization made everyone uncomfortable. Someone had spent years watching her. Years. Then investigators discovered something even worse. The photographs became more recent. More frequent. More detailed. Whoever collected them had become obsessed. And Ava wasn't the only one. Elias had his own section. Nearly identical. Pictures. Notes. Schedules. Locations. Movements. Everything. The evidence confirmed one horrifying fact. Neither Ava nor Elias had imagined being watched. They really were targets. The question was why. As forensic teams continued processing the room, a detective opened a filing cabinet hidden beneath a work table. Inside were dozens of folders, each labeled with dates. Most contained routine surveillance notes. But one folder immediately stood out. It was marked with a single word. Recovery. Nobody knew what it meant. The folder was opened carefully. Inside were reports. Schedules. Photographs. Operational notes. And references to a missing object. Again. The same object Ava mentioned in her video. The same object investigators still couldn't identify. Page after page referenced efforts to locate it. Track it. Recover it. Protect it. The wording suggested something unusual. The people behind the operation weren't trying to steal the object. They believed it already belonged to them. That detail confused investigators even more. Because if they considered it theirs, how had it disappeared? And how had Ava become connected to it? Then another document changed everything. A personnel list. Not a complete one. Just several names. Most were unfamiliar. But one name stopped the room cold. Detective Rowan Hale. Silence followed. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Because Rowan Hale wasn't a suspect. He wasn't a witness. He wasn't connected to the case in any obvious way. He was one of the investigators assigned to find Ava. He had been involved since the beginning. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Much more dangerous. Investigators immediately checked the document again. The name was there. Clearly printed. No mistake. No misunderstanding. Rowan Hale. The implications were terrifying. If the document was genuine, someone inside the investigation might be connected to whatever organization Ava had uncovered. The possibility sent shockwaves through the task force. Internal Affairs was contacted immediately. But before anyone could confront Hale, another discovery emerged. A hidden safe. Built directly into the wall. Forensic specialists spent nearly an hour opening it. When the door finally swung open, everyone expected documents. Perhaps money. Perhaps weapons. Instead, they found a collection of digital storage devices. Flash drives. Memory cards. External hard drives. Dozens of them. All carefully labeled. All catalogued. A massive archive. The contents would take weeks to analyze. But investigators couldn't wait. They began examining files immediately. And within hours they uncovered something shocking. Video footage. Hundreds of recordings. Secret recordings. Many captured meetings. Conversations. Exchanges. Most participants remained unidentified. Yet one recording stood apart from all the others. The timestamp was from the night Ava disappeared. The footage showed a warehouse. Rain falling outside. Poor lighting. Several figures standing together. Then a familiar face entered the frame. Ava. Alive. The room erupted with activity. Investigators replayed the footage repeatedly. Ava appeared frightened. But she wasn't restrained. She wasn't injured. She seemed to be speaking with someone. Then another familiar face stepped into view. Elias Voss. For the first time, investigators saw them together on the night of the disappearance. The footage lasted less than 2 minutes. Yet it revealed something crucial. Neither Ava nor Elias appeared to be prisoners. They looked like people making a decision. A difficult decision. Perhaps even a desperate one. Then the video abruptly ended. No explanation. No continuation. Nothing. Just static. The discovery raised even more questions. If Ava and Elias were alive together after the live stream ended, then what happened afterward? Where did they go? Who were they meeting? And why did all evidence vanish immediately after that recording? Late that evening, investigators finally attempted to locate Detective Rowan Hale. The results were alarming. His phone was disconnected. His apartment was empty. His vehicle was missing. No one could reach him. No one could find him. It was as if he had disappeared the moment the station was searched. And suddenly the investigation had its first major suspect. A suspect with access to evidence. Access to police information. Access to the investigation itself. A suspect who seemed to vanish at exactly the wrong time. But Ava's warning from the video echoed through everyone's mind. Asterisk, don't trust the obvious answer. Asterisk. Asterisk, the person everyone blames won't be responsible. Asterisk. The more investigators considered those words, the less comfortable they became. Because Rowan Hale looked too obvious. Too convenient. Almost as if someone wanted him to be discovered. And if that was true, then the real danger might still be hidden. Watching. Waiting. Preparing for whatever came next. Because buried inside one of the hard drives recovered from Blackthorn Station was a file nobody had opened yet. A file labeled only with 2 words. Phase 4. And according to its timestamp, it had been created only 6 hours earlier. By the following morning, Detective Rowan Hale had become the most wanted man in Briar Heights. Every available officer was looking for him. His photograph appeared on internal bulletins. His vehicle information was distributed statewide. His apartment had already been searched. His financial records were being reviewed. His phone activity was being traced. Yet it was as if Rowan Hale had vanished into thin air. The timing couldn't have been worse. For weeks he had worked alongside investigators. He attended meetings. Reviewed evidence. Helped organize search operations. He knew exactly what the task force had discovered. And now he was gone. The media immediately seized the story. Within hours, headlines began appearing everywhere. The missing detective. The men behind Ava's disappearance. The investigator who became a suspect. Public opinion formed quickly. Too quickly. People wanted answers. And Rowan Hale seemed like the perfect villain. A detective connected to a secret surveillance network. A detective who disappeared immediately after his name surfaced. A detective with access to everything. The narrative practically wrote itself. But inside police headquarters, many investigators remained unconvinced. Because something still didn't fit. If Rowan Hale truly operated the network, why would his name appear inside a hidden file? Why leave evidence pointing directly toward himself? Why create a trail so obvious? The questions bothered everyone. Especially lead investigator Nora Whitaker. Unlike the media, Nora believed in patterns. And this pattern felt wrong. Very wrong. She couldn't stop thinking about Ava's warning. Asterisk, don't trust the obvious answer. Asterisk. Those words echoed through her mind constantly. The more she examined the evidence, the more she believed Ava had been trying to tell investigators something important. Something they still hadn't understood. Meanwhile, forensic teams continued analyzing the massive archive recovered from Blackthorn Station. Thousands of files remained untouched. Thousands of clues waiting to be discovered. Then they found something unexpected. A personnel evaluation report. Not for Rowan. For someone else. The document appeared heavily encrypted, but specialists eventually recovered enough information to identify the subject. The name shocked everyone. Director Malcolm Reed. The room fell silent. Malcolm Reed wasn't a criminal. He wasn't a suspect. He wasn't even a police officer. He was the city's director of infrastructure planning. One of the most respected public officials in Briar Heights. A man known for charity events, public appearances, and community projects. People trusted Malcolm Reed. Which immediately made investigators suspicious. Because the recovered documents mentioned his name repeatedly. Not casually. Not occasionally. Constantly. Everywhere. As analysts dug deeper, they discovered something disturbing. Many locations connected to the Watchers somehow intersected with infrastructure projects managed by Malcolm's department. Abandoned warehouses. Storage facilities. Transit properties. Utility sites. Buildings nobody paid attention to. Buildings that provided privacy. Buildings that offered secrecy. Buildings perfect for hidden operations. The connections were impossible to ignore. Yet there was still no proof. Only patterns. And patterns alone weren't enough. Then another file surfaced. A financial report. At first it appeared ordinary. Budget transfers. Construction allocations. Routine government paperwork. But forensic accountants noticed discrepancies. Large sums of money moving through shell organizations. Millions of dollars. Transferred repeatedly through complicated layers of accounts. The trail was intentionally difficult to follow. Yet somehow many transactions ultimately pointed back toward entities connected to Malcolm Reed. The discovery changed everything. For the first time, investigators began considering a possibility nobody had imagined. What if the Watchers weren't a criminal gang? What if they weren't stalkers? What if they were part of a much larger operation hidden beneath legitimate institutions? An operation protected by influential people. An operation with resources. Money. Power. Connections. The idea seemed unbelievable. Yet the evidence kept growing. Then forensic specialists finally opened the mysterious file labeled Phase 4. Everyone gathered around the monitor. The file contained a presentation. Professional. Organized. Detailed. Almost corporate in appearance. Page after page described objectives. Targets. Schedules. Operational procedures. Many sections remained encrypted. But enough information was visible to reveal something terrifying. The organization wasn't shrinking. It was expanding. Rapidly. And according to the documents, Ava and Elias had become major obstacles. Not because they understood everything, but because they had discovered enough. Enough to become dangerous. Enough to attract attention. Enough to require intervention. One slide contained a phrase investigators would never forget. Asterisk, information leaks create instability. Asterisk. Another slide read. Asterisk, recovery priority elevated. Asterisk. Again that word. Recovery. The same word found throughout earlier documents. The same word connected to the missing object. Clearly everything revolved around whatever Ava had found. The object remained the center of the mystery. And investigators still had no idea what it was. Then came the biggest shock of all. Near the end of the presentation appeared surveillance footage. Footage investigators had never seen before. The timestamp showed the evening of Ava's disappearance. A warehouse. Rain outside. Poor lighting. The same warehouse from the previous recording. Ava appeared. Then Elias. Then a third person entered the frame. The image quality wasn't perfect. But the face became clear enough. Everyone recognized him immediately. Director Malcolm Reed. No one spoke. No one moved. The evidence was impossible to dismiss now. Malcolm Reed had direct contact with Ava and Elias. Hours before both disappeared. The implications were enormous. Search warrants were prepared immediately. Investigators moved fast. Very fast. Because if Malcolm realized they were closing in, he might disappear just like Rowan Hale. But when officers arrived at Malcolm's residence, they found something unexpected. He was still there. Calm. Relaxed. Cooperative. Almost as if he had been expecting them. The search began. Documents were seized. Computers collected. Phones examined. Yet Malcolm showed no signs of panic. That alone made investigators nervous. People usually panic when police search their homes. Malcolm didn't. Not even slightly. When questioned, he admitted knowing Ava. He admitted knowing Elias. He admitted meeting them. But his explanation stunned investigators. According to Malcolm, Ava and Elias had approached him voluntarily. Not the other way around. And then he said something that completely changed the direction of the case. Something nobody expected. Something that instantly transformed Rowan Hale from suspect into possible victim. Malcolm leaned forward and calmly stated, "You're looking at the wrong organization." The room went silent. Then he added, "Rowan wasn't working for us." A pause. A cold smile. And then 4 words that would haunt investigators for weeks. He was running from them. Suddenly everything changed again. Because if Malcolm was telling the truth, then Rowan Hale wasn't the mastermind. He wasn't even part of Malcolm's operation. Which meant Ava's warning had been correct. The obvious suspect wasn't responsible. And somewhere beyond Rowan. Beyond Malcolm. Beyond even the Watchers. Another player existed. Someone investigators still hadn't identified. Someone powerful enough to frighten everyone else. Including the people they thought were in control. And according to a newly recovered message hidden deep inside Ava's files, that person had a name. A name investigators had never encountered before. The Architect. By this point, the investigation barely resembled the case it had been at the beginning. What started as the disappearance of a young livestream creator had evolved into something much larger. Much stranger. Investigators had uncovered secret surveillance rooms. Hidden archives. Mysterious organizations. Missing evidence. Corrupt networks. And now a new name had entered the story. The Architect. Nobody knew who the Architect was. Nobody knew whether the title belonged to a man, a woman, or even a single person. It sounded almost mythical. The kind of name conspiracy theorists invent online. Yet investigators couldn't ignore it. Because Ava had referenced it repeatedly. Not often. But enough. And every mention carried the same tone. Fear. Not ordinary fear. The kind of fear someone feels when they realize they're dealing with something far beyond their control. Forensic analysts immediately searched every recovered file. Thousands of documents. Hundreds of recordings. Weeks of evidence. Slowly a pattern began emerging. The title appeared only in fragmented references. Never directly. Never clearly. Almost as if people were afraid to write it down. One recovered message from Elias simply stated, Asterisk, if the architect knows we've connected the pieces, we're out of time. Asterisk. Another file contained only 3 words. Asterisk, don't contact architect. Asterisk. And one particularly disturbing note written by Ava read, Asterisk, everyone thinks they're in charge until architect gets involved. Asterisk. The statement sent chills through investigators. Because it suggested something extraordinary. The watchers feared the architect. Malcolm Reed feared the architect. Even Rowan Hale appeared connected somehow. The deeper investigators dug, the more everyone seemed linked to the same invisible figure. Yet nobody could identify them. Then another breakthrough arrived. While examining records recovered from Blackthorn Station, analysts discovered a hidden communications server. The server contained years of encrypted messages. Most remained inaccessible. But one conversation was successfully restored. The participants were unidentified. However, the content changed everything. One person wrote, Asterisk, the object has resurfaced. Asterisk. The second replied, Asterisk, confirm location. Asterisk. The first answered, Asterisk, possession uncertain. Monroe may have it. Asterisk. Monroe. Ava Monroe. For the first time, investigators had direct evidence connecting Ava to the mysterious object. The conversation continued. Asterisk, recovery team. Asterisk. Asterisk, denied. Asterisk. Asterisk, reason. Asterisk. Then came the response. The response that stunned everyone. Asterisk, architect wants observation only. Asterisk. Observation only. Not recovery. Not intervention. Observation. Why? If the object was so important, why wait? Why watch? Why allow Ava to continue investigating? The answer remained hidden. Until another recovered message revealed something shocking. Apparently Ava wasn't supposed to find the object. Nobody was. The object had been lost decades earlier. Completely lost. The organization searching for it had spent years failing to locate it. Then Ava accidentally discovered a clue. A random clue. A coincidence. One tiny piece of information that eventually led her toward the truth. The revelation transformed everything. Ava hadn't been targeted because she was special. She wasn't chosen. She wasn't recruited. She simply stumbled into something she was never meant to see. And once she did, powerful people started paying attention. The realization made her disappearance feel even more tragic. Because none of it was supposed to happen. Not to her. Not to Elias. Not to anyone. Meanwhile, Malcolm Reed remained under constant questioning. The more investigators spoke with him, the stranger his story became. He admitted knowing about the Watchers. He admitted participating in surveillance operations. Yet he insisted his group wasn't responsible for Ava's disappearance. According to Malcolm, the Watchers existed for one purpose. Monitoring information. Not controlling it. Not stealing it. Monitoring it. The distinction seemed important to him. When asked about the architect, Malcolm became noticeably uncomfortable. It was the first time investigators saw genuine fear in his eyes. He refused to answer direct questions. He changed subjects. Requested legal counsel. Ended interviews early. His reaction told investigators more than any statement could. The architect was real. And Malcolm wanted nothing to do with discussing them. Then the biggest twist of the entire case arrived. 3 days later. Without warning. A package arrived at police headquarters. Again. No fingerprints. No return address. No security footage. Exactly like the flash drive. Inside was a single envelope. Nothing else. Investigators opened it carefully. The contents stunned everyone. A handwritten letter. Signed by Rowan Hale. The missing detective. The prime suspect. The man everyone believed had disappeared. The letter began with a sentence nobody expected. Asterisk, if you're reading this, Malcolm has already lied to you. Asterisk. Every investigator in the room froze. They immediately continued reading. Rowan claimed he had been trying to expose the network for years. Not participate in it. Expose it. According to the letter, he first discovered suspicious activity during a routine investigation years earlier. The deeper he looked, the more dangerous things became. Eventually he realized multiple organizations were competing for control of the same secret. Not working together. Competing. The Watchers were only one group. Malcolm's network was another. Several others existed. All searching. All monitoring. All trying to locate the same thing. And above all of them stood the architect. Not a leader. Not a boss. Something far more complicated. According to Rowan, the architect never gave orders directly. Never appeared publicly. Never left evidence. Instead, people changed their behavior simply because they believed the architect was watching. The influence was psychological. Almost legendary. A shadow hanging over everyone involved. Investigators struggled to understand. The description sounded impossible. Yet it matched everything they had discovered. Fear. Secrecy. Obsession. Nobody seemed willing to challenge the architect. Then Rowan revealed something even more shocking. Ava and Elias weren't dead. At least not when he wrote the letter. The room erupted into chaos. Everyone reread the sentence. Then read it again. Rowan explicitly stated. Asterisk, they were alive when I last saw them. Asterisk. Alive. Not missing. Not dead. Alive. The implication changed everything. If true, investigators weren't solving a disappearance anymore. They were racing against time. Because Rowan also included a warning. A warning directed specifically toward Ava. Asterisk, she's closer than anyone realizes. Asterisk. Closer to what? The answer came on the final page. The final paragraph. The final clue. The final twist. Rowan claimed the object everyone was searching for wasn't valuable because of money. It wasn't technology. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't treasure. It was information. Information hidden decades earlier. Information capable of exposing powerful people. Powerful institutions. Powerful secrets. The kind of information entire organizations would kill to control. And according to Rowan, Ava had already figured out where it was. The letter ended abruptly. No signature beyond his name. No location. No instructions. Only one final sentence. A sentence that instantly launched the investigation into its final phase. Asterisk, if you want to find Ava Monroe, stop looking for her. Asterisk. A pause. Then. Asterisk, start looking where she was going. Asterisk. For weeks investigators had been asking where Ava disappeared. Now they had a different question. Where was she headed? Because somewhere ahead of Ava's path lay the truth. The truth about the object. The truth about the architect. And the truth about what really happened on the night she vanished. A truth so shocking that even the people responsible had spent decades trying to bury it. For nearly 2 months, investigators had been chasing shadows. Every answer created new questions. Every clue opened another mystery. Every suspect led somewhere unexpected. But Rowan Hale's letter changed everything. For the first time, investigators stopped asking where Ava Monroe had disappeared. Instead, they began asking where she had been going. The difference seemed small. Yet it transformed the entire case. Because Ava hadn't been running away. She had been moving towards something. Something she believed was important enough to risk everything. The task force rebuilt her final timeline from the beginning. Every message. Every phone call. Every location. Every movement. Thousands of pieces slowly came together. And eventually one destination appeared again and again. A forgotten government records facility on the outskirts of Briar Heights. The building had been closed for years. Most people didn't even know it existed. Old city maps barely mentioned it. Yet Ava's notes referenced it repeatedly. So did Elias's files. And hidden deep within Rowan Hale's letter was a coded reference pointing to the same location. Investigators immediately obtained access. The structure looked ordinary. Aging brick walls. Boarded windows. Overgrown vegetation. Nothing remarkable. But inside, beneath decades of dust and forgotten paperwork, they found something astonishing. A concealed archive. Not hidden by criminals. Hidden by officials. Locked behind reinforced walls. Protected by systems that should not have existed inside an abandoned records building. The discovery stunned everyone. Because the archive contained thousands of documents dating back nearly 40 years. Many were heavily restricted. Others appeared intentionally removed from public databases. And buried among them was the truth. The truth about the object. The truth about the Watchers. The truth about Ava. The truth about everything. The object wasn't a weapon. It wasn't advanced technology. It wasn't a fortune in stolen money. It was information. Pure information. Decades earlier, several influential individuals had secretly documented evidence of corruption involving powerful institutions throughout the region. The evidence had never been released. Instead, it had been hidden. Protected. Passed quietly between trusted people. Generation after generation. The collection became known only by a code name. The archive. Over time, knowledge of its existence faded. People retired. People died. Records disappeared. Eventually most believed the archive had been lost forever. But some never stopped searching. Organizations formed. Networks emerged. Observers watched. Entire groups dedicated themselves to finding it. Not necessarily to destroy it. Not necessarily to reveal it. Simply to control it. Because whoever controlled the archive controlled the truth. And truth is power. Ava had never intended to find any of it. Months earlier she had stumbled across a clue completely by accident. A forgotten photograph. A date. A location. A connection nobody else noticed. Curiosity led her further. Then further still. Until eventually she discovered evidence that the archive might actually exist. That's when the Watchers noticed her. Not because she was important. Because she was getting close. Closer than anyone had managed in decades. Elias had discovered the same trail independently. Their investigations eventually crossed paths. Instead of working separately, they began sharing information. Together they moved faster. Too fast. And suddenly multiple groups became interested in them. Yet Rowan Hale's letter had revealed one final truth investigators still didn't fully understand. The architect. Who, or what, was the architect? The answer turned out to be far stranger than anyone imagined. The architect wasn't a person. At least not anymore. Years earlier there had been a real individual known by that title. The original architect of the secret network surrounding the archive. The creator of the systems. The protocols. The hidden infrastructure. But that person had died long ago. What remained was something else entirely. An idea. A legend. A set of instructions followed blindly by generations afterward. People acted in the architect's name. Made decisions in the architect's name. Feared consequences from the architect. Even though no actual architect existed anymore. The revelation stunned investigators. Entire organizations had been controlling their behavior because of a ghost. A myth. A story that became stronger every year simply because everyone believed it. And that myth had fueled decades of secrecy. Decades of fear. Decades of obsession. The mystery finally made sense. Yet one question remained. Where were Ava and Elias? The answer arrived unexpectedly. 3 days after investigators discovered the hidden archive. A phone call came into police headquarters. The caller refused to identify themselves. The voice was distorted electronically. But the message was simple. Check platform 9. Then the call ended. Nothing else. Platform 9. The location immediately sounded familiar. Blackthorn Station. Investigators rushed there within hours. The terminal was searched again. This time focusing on areas previously overlooked. Eventually they found a maintenance passage hidden behind a collapsed wall. The tunnel extended deep beneath the station. Far deeper than original blueprints indicated. At the end stood a sealed room. Inside were supplies. Food. Water. Batteries. Medical equipment. Evidence of recent habitation. And sitting quietly in the corner were 2 exhausted figures. Ava Monroe. Elias Voss. Alive. The moment felt surreal. Months of searching. Months of theories. Months of fear. And suddenly there they were. Alive. Neither resisted. Neither attempted to flee. In fact, both appeared relieved. Profoundly relieved. As if they had been waiting. As if they knew this moment would eventually come. Investigators immediately transported them to safety. Medical evaluations confirmed they were dehydrated and exhausted but otherwise unharmed. The public reaction was explosive. The city celebrated. News coverage dominated every network. The mystery appeared solved. The missing woman had been found. Case closed. Except it wasn't. Because Ava's explanation revealed the final piece of the puzzle. According to Ava, she and Elias disappeared voluntarily. Not because they wanted attention. Not because they wanted to hide forever. Because they believed nobody could be trusted. Not the police. Not the Watchers. Not Malcolm Reed. Not anyone. Every side wanted information. Every side wanted control. And nobody seemed interested in the truth itself. So they vanished. Long enough to locate the archive. Long enough to ensure it couldn't disappear again. Long enough to expose what needed exposing. Ava admitted she had sent multiple anonymous clues to investigators. The flash drive. The recordings. The directions. Even Rowan Hale's letter. Because Rowan had helped them. Not kidnapped them. Helped them. The supposed villain had actually been protecting them. Ava's warning had been correct all along. The obvious suspect wasn't responsible. The truth was far more complicated. Yet ultimately far less sinister than people imagined. There was no mastermind controlling everything. No criminal genius pulling strings from the shadows. Only generations of people protecting secrets. Fearing secrets. And chasing secrets. Until those secrets consumed them. The mystery that began with a terrifying livestream ended not with murder, but with truth. And sometimes truth changes lives more than violence ever could. But while the investigation had finally uncovered what happened, The emotional consequences were only beginning. When the news broke that Ava Monroe had been found alive, Briar Heights practically stopped moving. People left work early. Restaurants placed televisions on every channel covering the story. Social media platforms exploded. Millions of posts appeared within hours. For months, people had feared the worst. Many believed Ava had been murdered. Others believed she would never be found. Now the impossible had happened. She was alive. And for the first time since the terrifying live stream, the world finally knew the truth. Or at least most of it. Because even after investigators closed the case, many details remained confidential. The archive itself was placed under strict protection. Certain records became public. Others did not. The goal was transparency without creating chaos. Not everyone agreed with that decision. But the city had already endured enough. The last thing officials wanted was another wave of fear and conspiracy theories. Meanwhile, Ava faced a completely different challenge. Returning to normal life. Something that sounded simple. But wasn't. Not even close. Imagine disappearing from the public eye for months. Imagine becoming the center of a nationwide mystery. Imagine millions of strangers discussing your life every day. Then imagine suddenly returning. Nothing about that experience is normal. Nothing about it is easy. According to people close to Ava, the adjustment was difficult. Very difficult. She struggled with attention. She struggled with interviews. She struggled with public appearances. Even simple activities became complicated. A trip to a grocery store often turned into dozens of conversations. People recognized her everywhere. Everyone wanted answers. Everyone wanted details. Everyone wanted the story. But Ava wasn't interested in becoming a celebrity. Not anymore. She had seen what obsession could do. She had seen what curiosity could become when pushed too far. For weeks after her return, she rarely appeared in public. Instead, she focused on healing. Spending time with family. Meeting with counselors. Rebuilding routines. Finding normal life again. One evening, several months later, Ava finally returned to live streaming. The announcement alone attracted enormous attention. Thousands of viewers arrived early. Many expected dramatic revelations. Others expected a detailed breakdown of the investigation. Some simply wanted proof that she was okay. When the stream began, Ava appeared exactly where viewers remembered her. Same camera setup. Same makeup desk. Same brushes. Same mirror. The sight felt emotional for many people. Almost unreal. Ava smiled softly. Picked up a foundation brush. And began talking. Not about conspiracies. Not about investigations. Not about secrets. Just life. Ordinary life. The audience immediately understood. She wasn't trying to relive the mystery. She was trying to move beyond it. As she blended foundation into her skin, she spoke honestly about fear. About trust. About recovery. About how easily people can lose themselves when searching for answers. The stream became one of the most watched broadcasts in the city's history. Not because of shocking revelations. Because of its simplicity. People weren't watching a mystery anymore. They were watching a survivor reclaim her life. Meanwhile, Elias Voss faced challenges of his own. Unlike Ava, he had never enjoyed public attention. The sudden spotlight made him deeply uncomfortable. After cooperating fully with investigators, Elias largely disappeared from public view. He declined interviews. Rejected media offers. Ignored requests for documentaries and books. People speculated endlessly about where he went. But according to the few who remained in contact with him, that was exactly how he wanted it. Privacy. Peace. Normality. Things he had not experienced in a very long time. Then there was Rowan Hale. Perhaps the most misunderstood person in the entire story. For months he had been viewed as a villain, a suspect, a traitor, the man who vanished at the worst possible moment. Yet the truth revealed something entirely different. Rowan had spent years quietly trying to expose the network surrounding the archive. His methods weren't always perfect. Some investigators criticized his secrecy. Others questioned his decisions. But few doubted his intentions anymore. Eventually Rowan returned voluntarily. He cooperated with authorities, provided testimony, helped clarify critical portions of the investigation. Public opinion shifted dramatically. The men many once blamed became one of the people credited with helping uncover the truth. Not everyone forgave him. Not everyone trusted him. But history rarely gives us perfect heroes. Most people are far more complicated than that. Perhaps no one understood that better than Ava. Then there was Malcolm Reed. The public expected a dramatic downfall, a shocking arrest, a villain exposed. Reality proved more complicated. Investigations revealed misconduct, questionable decisions, hidden activities, but not the grand criminal conspiracy many imagined. Instead, Malcolm became another example of how secrecy creates problems. How good intentions can slowly transform into harmful systems. How fear can justify almost anything when left unchecked. His reputation never fully recovered. Yet his story became a cautionary tale rather than a criminal legend. As months turned into a year, life slowly moved forward. The city healed. The headlines faded. The mystery stopped dominating conversations. People moved on. That's what people do. But some moments remained unforgettable. Especially the live stream. Even now, many viewers remember exactly where they were that night. Exactly what they felt. Exactly how terrified they became when Ava disappeared from the screen. The footage remained one of the most analyzed videos in internet history. Not because it showed violence. Because it captured uncertainty. The moment when nobody knew what would happen next. The moment when an ordinary night transformed into an extraordinary mystery. And perhaps that's why the story resonated with so many people. Not because it involved secret organizations. Not because it involved hidden archives. Not because it involved mysterious clues. But because at its heart, it was about something much more human. Fear. Curiosity. Trust. And the consequences of searching for answers. Eventually Ava summarized the entire experience better than anyone else ever could. During a later live stream, while carefully applying eyeliner, a viewer asked whether she regretted investigating the mystery at all. The chat waited. Thousands of people watched. Ava thought for a moment. Then smiled. And answered. Some truths are worth finding. A pause. Then she added. But never forget what they might cost. The comments spread online almost immediately. Not because it sounded dramatic. Because it sounded honest. And after everything she had experienced, honesty carried more weight than any mystery ever could. The case was over. The answers had been found. The people involved had finally begun moving forward. Yet one final lesson remained. A lesson that would stay with Briar Heights for generations. A lesson hidden beneath every clue, every secret, every twist, and every unanswered question. The lesson that ultimately defined the entire story. The story of Ava Monroe began like any ordinary night. A young woman sat in front of a camera. A makeup brush in one hand. A conversation with her audience. Rain falling outside her apartment window. Nothing unusual. Nothing extraordinary. Just another live stream. At least that's what everyone believed. Nobody watching could have imagined that within minutes, Ava would disappear and become the center of one of the most confusing mysteries Briar Heights had ever seen. For months people searched for villains. For months people searched for simple answers. Someone to blame. Someone to hate. Someone to point at and say, that's the reason. But real mysteries rarely work that way. Sometimes the truth hides beneath assumptions. Sometimes the obvious answer is the wrong answer. And sometimes the thing we're searching for isn't a person at all. It's understanding. What made Ava's story different wasn't the mystery itself. It wasn't the secret archives. It wasn't the surveillance networks. It wasn't even the architect. It was what those things revealed about people. Because throughout this entire story, one pattern appeared over and over again. Fear. Fear caused people to hide information. Fear caused people to make mistakes. Fear caused people to protect secrets long after those secrets should have been exposed. Fear turned ordinary individuals into watchers. Fear transformed curiosity into obsession. And fear nearly destroyed lives that never should have been pulled into the mystery in the first place. Yet another force appeared throughout the story as well. Curiosity. The same curiosity that pushed Ava to investigate. The same curiosity that encouraged Elias to keep searching. The same curiosity that drove investigators to continue asking questions when easier answers were available. Curiosity can be dangerous. But curiosity is also how truth survives. Without it, secrets remain hidden forever. Without it, nobody learns. Nobody grows. Nobody understands. As I blend the final layer of foundation and look back at everything that happened, one detail stands out more than anything else. Ava was never the strongest person in the room. She wasn't a detective. She wasn't an expert investigator. She wasn't powerful. She wasn't wealthy. She was simply someone who noticed something strange and refused to ignore it. And sometimes that's enough to change everything. Maybe that's why so many people connected with her story. Because deep down, most of us like to believe we do the same thing. We'd ask questions. We'd keep looking. We'd search for the truth. But stories like this remind us that truth isn't always free. Sometimes it asks for sacrifice. Sometimes it demands courage. Sometimes it changes your life forever. Fortunately for Ava, Elias, Rowan, and everyone involved, this story ended differently than many mysteries do. Lives were not lost. Families were reunited. Answers were found. Healing became possible. Not perfect healing. Not instant healing. But real healing. And in a world filled with dark stories, that matters. A lot. Years later, people still remembered the night Ava vanished after her final livestream. They remembered the fear. The uncertainty. The endless theories. But they also remembered something else. The relief. The moment she returned. The moment the mystery finally ended. The moment everyone realized that hope had survived. And perhaps that's the final lesson hidden inside this story. Never underestimate the power of a question. Never underestimate the value of truth. And never underestimate how far ordinary people will go when they believe something matters. Because sometimes the biggest mysteries aren't about crime. They're about people. About choices. About trust. About the thin line between fear and courage. And about what happens when someone decides to keep searching even when every reason tells them to stop. The camera light fades. The makeup brushes rest quietly on the desk. The mystery finally comes to an end. But the questions it leaves behind may stay with us forever. If you like this channel or story, don't forget to subscribe. Please subscribe to Blush and Blood.